Now back to that fight of the century. You saw it right here on CNBC. Carl Icahn and Bill Ackman. Scott Wapner was in the middle of it. So, Scotty, tee it up for us.
Yeah, Sue, it was quite a battle between these two hedge fund titans. Carl Icahn on one side, Bill Ackman on the other, still battling over a decades-old deal. Many iterations in a courtroom, which Bill Ackman ended up winning. It seems, though, not as all is not forgotten, however, from these two men. More recently, the argument has come on Herbalife, which Bill Ackman has taken a very noted and very public short position against. The market has speculated that Carl Icahn has taken a long position against Bill Ackman for part of the reason that he says he just doesn't like the guy. Let's listen.
I was concerned about dealing with Carl Icahn because Carl Icahn, unfortunately, does not have a good reputation for being a handshake guy.
Carl Icahn was speaking out against Bill Ackman again about that early deal that the two had, which ended up going to court on multiple occasions. Let's listen to Carl Icahn's side of the story.
He's a quintessential example that on Wall Street, if you want a friend, get a dog.
So, Sue, you don't see this every day, that's for sure.
No, you don't.
And I don't think these guys are going to be doing Eggs Benedict over at the Regency anytime soon.
Well, if they do, I'd love to be there.
Yeah.
Scotty, stay with us. Let's talk about this. Jim Cramer is here. Herb Greenberg's here. Kate Kelly is here. Tyler's with us down at the New York Stock Exchange. Jim, we've been in this business a long time. Have you ever seen anything like that?
No,
I haven't.
I told everybody in the room, shut up. Shut up. I got to hear this. And I ran up to Nick Diogan, who's our editor-in-chief. I said,
yeah,
this was it. You blew out the brakes. You did everything right. Scott Wapner, congratulations. And you did not bully him. This was amazing journalism. It's why a lot of us got into this business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fabulous, Scott.
Absolutely.
No, you're nice to say that guys. You know, it was these guys. When have you ever seen two titans like this going head-to-head so publicly on live television?
No, Ali Frazier. Ali Frazier. Twice I saw that.
I think it was better than that. I think it was absolutely better than that.
The thrill in Manila was not as good as what you're right.
It strikes me that it became so personal, you know, and the guiding tenet in investing when you're a hedge fund manager is don't be emotional about your trades.
Well,
take the emotion out.
Well, if you want to look
they
at the
sure
person,
didn't.
In this case, Icahn was clearly the emotional one, and at the very end there was a great exchange where Ackman said, "Carl, you're free to make a bid for the company, meaning Herbalife, if you want to," and Icahn said, "You don't tell me what I'm free to do." There was that sort of summed up the type of exchanges you had, back and forth, where it was just remarkable to see this sort of Icahn-esque.
You know, at the end of the day, guys, what this shows is there's no easy way to be an activist, right? I mean, you're going to piss a whole lot of people off if you come out with a position like Bill Ackman did, as publicly as he did, if you're on the other side of the trade. And both of these guys have been through enough rodeos to know and have sharp elbows and have thrown their weight around on all different sides of it. There's no easy way to do that job.
Why didn't he say? Why didn't Icahn? By the way, I've known him for many years. He is a handshake guy. I mean, he is a handshake guy.
Meaning he's good on his word.
Oh, yeah. I had never heard anyone say this. But, Scott, why didn't Carl Icahn say, I like Herbalife for these three reasons, and this is why it's going up? Not, it's a short mother of all. Why didn't he give us the three reasons and that he owned
because I don't think it was about Herbalife for Icahn. I think it was about Ackman.
This is the question I had in my mind. Exactly. What is motivating Carl Icahn here? Now, first of all, in terms of whether he's a handshake guy or not, I'll leave that to Jim. But I think people have made the mistake in the past of thinking they have him figured out. For example, I think of Chesapeake Energy, right? Icahn had invested in them in the past, was sort of a friendly but active investor, asked them to make some changes, pay down some debt, etc. Then last year he gets involved again, and suddenly it gets a little bit ugly, right? There's a lot of pressure on CEO Aubrey McClendon. Jim, you know this story very well. And he ends up going active and clashing with the company in some cases, and eventually, you know, makes a good investment. Now,
but remember, Aubrey says on camera to me, on and off camera, that Icahn did a lot of good things, gave a lot of good ideas. You know,
but
again,
I remember
handshake.
But wait a minute, guys.
I remember McClendon thinking they were friends. They had a breakfast, maybe at the Regency or someplace.
But here's
they were in
what's
the same
different.
corner.
You're talking about a company where I suspect some research was done. I do not believe, having spent 10 months on looking into Herbalife, we have a documentary out there, Selling the American Dream. It's on Investigations Inc. at CNBC.com, a little self-promotion there. I want to tell you one thing, though. doing the amount of research that company takes, you can't just do that in a few days.
Right.
So I think the point Ackman made is this appears to be just a trade. And as others on Wall Street, in emails to me today, other hedge fund managers
I
saying
thought that was a plausible argument. The idea that he was briefly in it, wrote it up, and now he's out.
And now he's out.
Who thinks he's out?
We don't know.
Who thinks?
I don't think so. He says
I don't think he's out.
He says short squeeze of the century, which, by the way, there are hedge fund managers who say that shows his true colors, and that could be construed, if you're engaged in that, manipulative.
Let's bring Ty in, too. Ty, come on in.
Did we, folks, ever find out whether Icahn is long the stock, has been long the stock, is in it now, or isn't? Because Scott pressed him multiple times. And he thought he was being bullied for being out.
I don't think we have a straight answer.
As a booker got involved. This thing was we were making sausage on TV.
Yes,
we were in the restaurant.
We're now being described as having just broadcast the best moment in financial TV history. So again,
well, I think
Scott,
it really was. But I do think it goes to the fact that these long-running and long-simmering disputes between these guys is getting in the way of their making
money makes things personal.
You know what? Let's not forget as well. I mean, I think the other takeaway, guys, is going to be the exchange, or at least the commentary that Bill Ackman had about his relationship with Dan Loeb about the Herbalife thing. I know.
Before we get to that, I don't know if this is getting in the way of making good financial decisions. What would you say, Scott? Because I mean, I think you've got Icahn, who says he had a tremendous last year, 28%. I believe he said Ackman was up 12%. Still not bad at all. I think they're both using the bully pulpit. I mean, nobody's better at that than Ackman, right? I mean, that's why he makes a 4-hour presentation to 300 investors saying why this is a great short case, and Icahn fights back.
It's why I said that everybody in the position of being an activist investor at some point, whether it's a Chanos, whether it's Ackman, Einhorn, Icahn, or anybody else, gets up on that stage as a number of conferences are held in Las Vegas, in New York, and wherever else around this country every year on multiple occasions, and they unveil their big short ideas or long ideas to the world. So they're well schooled in how this all is going to play out. This apparently has just become a little more personal than you would otherwise see.
By the way, Scott, and which was very interesting because one of Ackman's points was that Carl Icahn did the very same thing with shorts going back into the early 2000s with Trinity, and he mentioned also Conseco.
In 2003,
right?
Yeah.
In 2000. Jim, where does it go from here? I mean, we saw it play out here on our air, certainly, but what happens next, do you think, between these two guys?
Well, what I've been waiting to see is exactly how much stock that Michael Johnson, the CEO, is actually buying back. Is that buyback real? Is he going to? Will Loeb walk it up? Will Icahn walk it up? And will Herbalife stand behind it underneath, taking it up, and create that short squeeze that I know, that you may regard as fomentation, violation of the 34 Act. But I'm waiting for that to happen versus this next shoe that we keep hearing from Pershing.
But Ackman makes a great point here, and he says, if somebody's going to come in, they're going to buy back the shares. If indeed someone were to come in and try to buy the company, the issue is, would somebody come in if you have this underlying issue, which is still the biggest issue, because Ackman raised it. I've certainly done a lot of research that raises red flags and puts this company in a gray area. Is it somehow close to operating, if not entirely operating, a pyramid scheme? So how does that fit into the investment here?
You need a government authority to come in. Ackman doesn't own the government. Well, the government's not sitting there thinking, you know what, we ought to go in and investigate this.
How do you know?
That he doesn't own the government?
How do you know? No, how do you know what the government's doing right now? How do you know what senators are doing right now? How do you know what attorney generals are doing right now?
Okay. Here's what I know. You need a TRO.
Very quickly, we're going to take a break and come back.
Are you going to get a TRO from somebody?
But speaking of all that, you guys, I think one interesting storyline here, which gets the government involvement, is sure, you've got massive institutional investors, Ackman, Icahn, Loeb, and briefly Einhorn, getting involved in this situation. Whether they're in or out now, we don't know. But they're actually trying to turn this into a retail trade, right? Ackman, if nothing else, was making what he considered to be a public service announcement about the perils of being a distributor of this company, perhaps even a buyer user of its products, as well as an investor. And I think they're using us to get the public message out.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We haven't even touched on Mr. Loeb's involvement in this whole thing. I'd love to hear what he thought of that whole exchange on TV a few minutes ago. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more of this whole discussion right here on Power Lunch.
This is not an honest guy, and this is not a guy who keeps his word, and this is a guy who takes advantage of little people.